Ah, welcome, welcome. Gather round, my friends, and take your seats in the gallery. Tonight, we aren't just observers, no, we are witnesses to a most delicate procedure. The operating theater is prepped, our patient is waiting, and the malady? Well, it's the soul itself.
You see, our patient, and maybe this sounds familiar, is suffering from a very common ailment. We call it performative sanity. Everything is in its right place. Every line is memorized. It's a beautiful, stable life, isn't it? But it's also stuck. It's a fortress built on sand, a kind of unproductive stagnation.
Because, eventually that little tremor of untruth, it becomes too much to bear. The mask starts to crack. And that, my friends, is when a different kind of doctor gets a referral. The kind that doesn't heal with salves, but with a very, very sharp scalpel. So let the procedure begin.
And our procedure begins, as they all do, with Act 1, a clear, honest diagnosis. We have to name the sickness before we can even think about cutting it out.
So here's the heart of the problem. The patient's certainty isn't real belief anymore. It's just the muscle memory of belief. You get it? They're so practiced at wearing the mask of a sane, stable person that they've actually forgotten the face underneath. The performance has become the person, and that is the sickness we're here to excise.
Now, you can't just operate on a conscious patient. Of course not. Their defenses are way too strong. Their ego is too rigid. So we move to Act 2. We have to administer the anesthetic. The big takeaway here is that if you want profound change, you first have to loosen your grip on certainty.
And oh, what an anesthesiologist he is. Look, Mephistopheles isn't some cartoon demon of crude temptation. No, his role is much more subtle, much more important. He's the necessary irritant. He's the one who introduces just the right amount of chaos to begin the real work. He doesn't offer you a deal. He just asks a question that starts to unravel everything.
But you have to understand, this anesthetic is unique. This isn't a gentle sleep. We call it stinging grit. Think of it like a grain of sand inside an oyster. It's the doubt, the internal conflict, that uncomfortable truth that creates what we call the friction of the pit. It's an internal heat that starts to melt that rigid, cold certainty the patient has mistaken for strength. And the effect of this grit, well, it's total disorientation. The patient is thrown into a full-blown internal war. Their own desires, their own logic, their own shame, it's all turned against that artificial identity they've built. They become a complete stranger to themselves, just totally disoriented and divided. And only now, with all the defenses down, can the real surgery begin.
So, with the patient finally sedated by doubt, the surgical team, that's Act 3, can finally make their entrance. And yes, you might just recognize the one in the center. Let's meet the team, shall we? Our team is highly specialized. First, the verdant dragon makes the initial incision, cutting right past all the social rules straight into raw, unspoken desire, the id. Then, well, it's my turn. As the jester, I go for the cold scale, the mask of the ego, and I shatter that intellectual vanity. And finally, the seraphim gargoyle deals with the inverted halo, the superego, exposing all that guilt from dead traditions that have been mistaken for actual virtue. All right, the patient is prepped. The surgeons are ready. Now, we enter the operating room itself. But this is no sterile white chamber. Oh no, this is where the real fight happens. You see, this whole procedure takes place in a landscape the patient made themselves, the Valley of Shadows. And our main surgical instrument, it isn't a scalpel, it isn't a laser, it's something far more intimate, and honestly, far more terrifying. It's a mirror. And just to be clear, this is not the kind of mirror you use to check your hair. It reflects absolutely nothing you'd recognize as your curated self-image. There's no comfort here, no distance, no escape. Just think about that for a second. This mirror removes all detachment. You don't get to be a spectator in your own life anymore. It forces you to see yourself from a perspective you can never, ever naturally occupy. To see yourself in the act of seeing and searching and failing. There's no place left to stand outside the mirror. You're in it. And what does the patient see reflected back at them? 10,000 reasons why this surgery was so damn necessary in the first place. Now, these aren't external punishments from some angry god. These are the internal hells we build ourselves, from a lifetime of quiet little compromises. Every single time you chose comfort over the difficult truth, every time you failed to act on what you knew was right, every piece of rot you quietly agreed to leave unnamed, it's all reflected back now with perfect, horrifying clarity.
This is the heart of the operation.
The incisions are made, the rot is exposed. The operation is a technical success, but the patient is dying on the table. The final, most critical stage isn't the procedure itself, it's surviving it. This act is about finding what's left when everything else has been burned away.
And here it is. Here's the secret to survival. It's not a return to comfort. It's clinging to the one thing that's left when all the masks are gone, a tiny, painful ember of discomfort. This is the pulse of raw, primal honesty. It's that ancient sorrow you were given with your first breath. Yeah, it hurts, but that stinging necessity is the only thing keeping the soul from winking out completely.
So the recovery process is a clear path, even if it's a brutal one. First, you confront the truths. Then, you voluntarily surrender the masks you've been defending your whole life. You survive by holding on to that core of painful honesty. And from that raw ground, you begin the work of synthesis, building a new self, not from muscle memory, but from actual truth. And just look at the transformation. The journey takes our patient from a state of performative sanity to one of absolute honesty, from a faith of pure habit to something we call the true thing. They stop being just a passive mirror holder reflecting what society wants to see, and instead they start speaking directly from their authentic wound. And really, this is the profound takeaway from this whole surgical procedure. Comfort, stability, performance, it's all built on sand. The only bedrock that's solid enough to build a genuine life on is the difficult, painful, but ultimately liberating ground of absolute honesty.
The anesthetic has worn off. The surgeons have packed their instruments. The patient survived. And so, the final question. Well, it isn't for our allegorical traveler anymore. It's for you. Now that you've seen the whole procedure, what are you going to build on the ground you're standing on?